glad that you joined us today. We've got a great interview with Pastor Demetrius and Ashlyn Vickers from Nurturing Hope. But before we do that, let's enjoy some Move worship.
So glad you joined us this morning. Let's worship Jesus this morning for what he's done for us. He did it all on the cross. Thank you, Lord. Come on, sing this with me. No longer I, but Christ in me. I live by faith. Now what I see, your grace alone has set me free. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Come on, sing. No longer I, but Christ in me. I live by faith. Now what I see, your grace alone has set me free. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Come on, sing it out. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for saving me. Jesus Christ, my liberty. Hope renewed, alive in you. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. I could not pay, fueled by your love, you robbed the grave. Now that same power is here to save. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Come on, thank him this morning. Thank you, Lord, for saving us. Jesus Christ, victorious. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for saving us. Jesus Christ, victorious. Hope renewed, alive in you. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Yeah. We give thanks to Jesus this morning for what he's done for us. He did everything on the cross for us. We can sing to him. We can proclaim his good name this morning. Come on, sing this with me today. Our hearts will give repeated thanks to him. Our hearts will give repeated thanks. Our souls will sing repeated praise for all you've done and ways you've made. Bless your name. Our hearts will give repeated thanks. Our souls will sing repeated praise for all you've done and ways you made. Forever, we will forever bless your name. victorious, hope renewed, alive in you. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. In Isaiah 43, verse 19, God says, I'm going to do a new thing. And then he says, I'm going to make a way through the wilderness. I'm going to make a way through the desert and the river. And just like he made a way for the Israelites, just like he made that promise to them, he's going to do that for us. And he does that for us, and he has done that for us. Jesus did everything for us. He made a way on the cross for you, and he made a way on the cross for me. We can trust in God. We can trust in him. He's going to do it. He's going to do it. He's going to make a way for us. So we're going to sing that this morning that he is the way maker. He's the way maker. Way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Come on, he's here with us. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. Yeah. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. Come on, he's the way maker today. You are way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Yeah. You are way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, working. Even when I can't feel that you're working, you never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I can't see it, you're working. Even when I can't feel that you're working, you never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I can't see it, you're working. Even when I can't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I can't see it, you're working. Even when I can't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop, 'cause that is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. It's who you are, yeah. That is who you are. It's who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keep, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keep, light in the darkness. That is who you are. You are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Yes, that is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. It's who you are. That is 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 who you are. Come on, let's sing this. Even when I can't see it, you're working. Even when I can't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I can't see it, you're working. Even when I can't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop. Come on, sing it out. Even when I can't see it, you're working. Even when I can't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I can't see it, you're working. Even when I can't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. 'Cause that is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are, yeah. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 'Cause that is who you are. 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 'Cause that is who you are. 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 God, we sing that this morning knowing that you make a way for us. We sing that in confidence this morning, trusting in who you are this morning. And that your character, your promises say, I'm going to make a way for you. This morning we take hold of that promise that you have made a way, that you're going to continue to make a way, that you love us and you care for us, and we can trust in you fully, Lord, when there's so many things we can't take hold of, when there's so many things that we can't trust in, God, we know that we can trust in you and who you are. Thank you for making a way for us. Thank you for Jesus today. It's who you are. It's who you are. Thank you, Lord. Now we're going to move into Move News. Thanks for being with us today.
I'm so glad you're here with us at Move Church today. Let's see what's happening.
Our website, movechurch.tv, is a great resource for you to use. You can give online, listen to all of our sermons, read blogs, devotionals, and even join a small group. Also, make sure that you're following us on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Hey guys, Saturday prayer is still happening every Saturday at 9 a.m. via Zoom. Be sure to join us.
Download the YouVersion Bible app. That way you can follow today's sermon, see the outlines, and make notes.
We're so glad that you joined us today at Move Church. Let's get ready for the message.
Well, what's up, everybody? Pastor Demetrius here, and we are so excited that you guys are joining us. We're still in our series, A Million Little Things Dealing with Anxiety, and today we have a very special guest, Miss Ashlyn Vickers. Say hey, Ashlyn.
Hi.
Yeah, we're so grateful to have you today. We appreciate what you do in the mental health arena, especially dealing with kids. And we all know that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we try to, as a church, to really destigmatize the subject around mental and emotional health. And so today's conversation is going to be really geared toward parents and our kiddos, because we love our kids. And if we could train them younger to know how to deal with these things, it will save them time as they get older. So we're super excited. We have a lot of excited parents, and so they're going to be tuning into this conversation.
Hey.
And so we'll just kind of open it up with letting Ashlyn introduce herself. What do you do? Where are you from? And just some fun things like that.
All right. So my name is Ashlyn Vickers. I live in Coosa County, so central Alabama. I have a master's degree in counseling, and I am an associate licensed counselor. So essentially what an associate licensed counselor is someone who has finished graduate school, and after graduate school has decided to pursue licensure. And so with that, I am supervised by a licensed clinical supervisor, and you have to be supervised for 3,000 hours after you finish graduate school. And so it's just a really good experience for anyone that's thinking about doing counseling or is interested in the field. It's good experience to have that supervisor just to kind of oversee everything that you're doing and to give you really sound clinical feedback and suggestions on everything. And once you finish your 3,000 hours, you'll then be an LPC, which is a licensed professional counselor, and you no longer have to do supervision. You can see clients on your own with diagnosing, and you can do testing and, of course, counseling. And I'm very close to reaching that LPC mark, so I'm very excited about that. Currently I have a private practice called Nurturing Hope that I started about 6 months ago. And surprisingly, it's doing pretty well. I work with kids and adults, primarily with kids. I do play therapy. So I use play in my work with kids because that's the way to engage them. Mm-hmm. And also have training in EMDR, which is very trauma focused. So I work with a lot of clients, or I've had a lot of clients who have usually an extensive history of trauma. So I sought out that extra training for EMDR. So I have learned to utilize that in my practice recently. So I'm really, really excited about that. I've seen some really good results from EMDR, and of course, play therapy is also, a beloved type of therapy in the field. So.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, I'm excited to dig in. We have some questions that some of our parents submitted. And of course, we're all quarantined, so we hope you're being safe.
Yeah.
And so
I'm in my dining room. So.
Same for me. So it's like, we're all trying to stay safe. And so I know this will be a great resource. And so we'll just kick it off with question one. I have my questions here. So what do you do as a parent when kids struggle with communicating and they use that phrase that we all use so much, I don't know? So what do you have for advice in that?
That's a really good question. I get that a lot from parents that I've worked with. It's really typical for a child to say, I don't know, because they usually don't know, and of course that depends on their age, especially for a younger kiddo, their response typically is, I don't know, or it could just be code for, I don't want to talk about it, like, leave me alone. But, that's healthy. And it's always good. I always tell parents it's always good to encourage your child to express him or herself. And with that being said, I try to be very proactive with parents about teaching their kids emotions. Like, I do that with pretty much all of my kids that I see, is we just start with that foundational piece of learning our emotions and when they are, and that helps with emotional regulation. So if you kind of have that foundation, or if you're working on building that foundation, you can always encourage them to share a feeling, well, tell me how you're feeling. And they may be okay with that. And then some moments they may not be okay with that. And it's always okay just to give them that space if they don't want to talk about it, especially if they're angry. Because if someone's angry and, if we keep trying to communicate with them, you're not going to get a good response. And so that's going to cause them to be a little dysregulated. So it's better just to let them have their space to cool down, if that's going to play in their bedroom or going outside or eating a snack, or, and kids can process things, just through play sometimes. If they've had a bad day at school, maybe they just need that extra time to sit in their room and just kind of decompress and regulate themselves, really just regulating themselves, that's okay too. So yeah, I guess just to answer the question, it's okay to encourage them to express themselves, but if they don't know, you don't ever want to force it. You don't want your child to feel like, he's being threatened to express him or herself. You want it to be a very safe space for your child.
Yeah, I guess a good follow-up question to that one is, what would you say are the primary emotions? Like, if you were trying to help your child express that, what would be like the primary emotions you may want to teach them?
Usually for younger kids, I just tell parents the 4 basic emotions. So happy, sad, mad, and scared. So if you can just teach them those 4 basic emotions, then that's good. That's really all that they need to know, because they can't understand, the difference between angry and frustrated usually, or maybe, disappointment. And that will come with time. Yeah. Certainly you want to build their feelings vocabulary. Mm-hmm. You want them to learn the different feelings, because you can differentiate between the different feelings, of course. But you're right. Just learning those basic 4 feelings for younger kids is really helpful. And that way they're not trying to muster up a feeling whenever you ask them and think, am I disappointed? Am I really just frustrated? They can just kind of resort to one of those 4.
That's great advice. And that kind of leads us a little to the second question. So what's a good balance in giving space and then kind of knowing when you probably should press in a little harder for conversation? What's just a good tip on balancing that?
I would say just still keeping communication open. I always encourage parents to just, again, going back to that foundation, just trying to normalize feelings in their houses. And I do that with a lot of the work that I do with kids through play, learning our feelings. And I even have some books that I can share later that we use to help build that foundation, and some games, some fun ways to kind of incorporate that. But, just being able to normalize that, with your kids, and noticing if your kid has any changes in behavior or changes in academics or relationships, that's a time to kind of probably press in a little bit more. And that can, that could entail calling a licensed therapist, maybe seeing if it would be possible for your child to have an intake or an assessment done. And it's kind of one of those things, it's kind of a gray area, and you as the parent are going to know better than anyone, if your child is acting a little bit different than he normally would or she normally would. But yeah, I would say usually a good indication is if there's a good change in, or not really a good change, but just a change in behaviors or academics. Like if there's a decline in academics and it's been a couple of weeks, and you haven't seen really any improvement, it's usually good to call a therapist. Because again, you don't want to force your kid to just talk about things, because if he or she's angry or anxious, the emotional brain is going to be activated, and we don't want to press into that part too much. Mm-hmm. So it's usually good to try to get in with a therapist at that point.
Yeah, that's a good tip for sure. Because I remember as a kid being forced into things I wasn't ready for.
Yeah.
How to process it. And so that's really good advice.
Yeah.
Here's our next question. So what are some symptoms that are easily missed that could show us our kids struggle with anxiety, or the beginning stages of struggling with anxiety?
For anxiety specifically, some things to be mindful of would be if your child has a hard time focusing, maybe difficulties paying attention. And this could be noticed at home, especially at school when they're at school. I know right now kids aren't at school and things are a lot different than they typically are. But normally, if a kid's at school and you're getting reports from the teacher, or maybe if you have concerns and you haven't even heard anything from the teacher, you could still, just try to coordinate with the teacher and see if he or she notices anything, or maybe ask them to kind of observe. So any difficulties focusing, paying attention, maybe if they're more restless, even impulsive or a little bit hyperactive, that could be signs. Of course, if your child is complaining of intrusive thoughts, and of course they're not going to use that word intrusive, but just thoughts that they can't really control, a lot of negative thoughts, if they're having a hard time sleeping, those could all be good indications of anxiety. But I do want to preface that by saying that if your child has one of those symptoms, or maybe a couple of those symptoms, it doesn't mean they have anxiety. It could be, or it could also just be situational. It's just something to monitor. And if it's been ongoing for maybe like a couple of weeks or so, maybe that's when it would benefit you and your child to speak with a licensed therapist to see if it would be a good fit for your child to come in for an assessment. To at least rule out anxiety.
Yeah, that's good, because that kind of went into that next question. So at what point do you make the call to ask for professional help? You kind of just alluded to that a little bit, but you could probably go a little deeper if you desire.
Yeah, definitely. If you notice any of those symptoms, again, just the key thing to remember is just changes from, what your child typically looks like, what his or her behaviors typically look like. If your child is just having a harder time focusing, again, if they're a little bit more restless, if they're having those difficult, disturbing, or just negative thoughts in general, that's always a good sign. And to go further than anxiety, if your child is just having behavioral problems and you're having a hard time just managing those at home, you could always get help with a therapist. It's always good too to find somebody who has experience with those types of things. So, if it's anxiety, if it's behavioral problems, if it's, maybe some depression, which can look a lot like anger. A child's not usually going to present as really sad. They're going to present more angry or irritable, maybe anxious. So, if you have any concerns like that, you can always reach out to a licensed therapist. Also, I work with a lot of trauma. Some kids, someone may have custody of a child who is not their biological child, or has adopted someone, or is fostering a child. And if there's a history of trauma and you notice any of these behaviors, as far as anxiety or a lot of anger or defiant oppositional behaviors, it's always good to, in my opinion, seek out a therapist who can help with the trauma. And again, you want to find someone who has experience working with trauma and working with kids with trauma. And most definitely, if you have a child who is reporting suicidal thoughts or self-harm, it's always best just to call and get your child in with someone as quickly as possible. And if you don't know who to call, check with your pediatrician. They usually have referrals that they're kind of in good standing with, and that they have learned to trust and build rapport with. And so, if you have that trust with your pediatrician, ask him or her if they know of someone that could meet with your child.
Yeah. I'm glad you highlighted that, because a lot of kids are way more aware of things than we give them credit. And when things change, and if there are things going on in the home, and just change in general, it's hard for us to embrace as adults. And they're processing that as well. And those are great things to look out for. Behavioral things, could be saying different things.
Yes.
And I never even thought about, like a licensed counselor helping with behavioral things. That's great advice, because I know we have a ton of parents who have those struggles as well. So I'm glad you highlighted that for sure.
Yeah. And I will say too, if your child has been diagnosed with autism, or if you suspect that your child has autism, you can take your child with autism to meet with a licensed therapist. But again, just make sure that therapist has the experience of working with a child with autism. And that could even look different from child to child, because like for me, example, I work with children with high functioning autism, but I don't have experience with children with low functioning autism. So just making sure that you ask the right questions and trying to find what's going to work for you and your child. And also for children with autism, while I'm thinking about it, there are behavioral analysts who specialize, and they work really well with children with autism, with just behaviors. They work really well with those types of things. So that's something else to be cognizant of as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we have a question for the teenage age group. So how do you help teens process and identify their feelings in a healthy way? Because, if you hadn't done it when they were younger, now they're teenagers. Ooh, boy.
Yes. This is why I try to be so proactive about educating parents on emotions, just the basics of emotions and having that foundation. But sometimes we get in these places where now our kids are teenagers and we haven't really talked about emotions. And now, kids or teenagers are hormonal and they're going through all these different changes. And middle school is really tough for kids. Like middle school is really hard. I always think it's best just, again, to encourage your child, your teenager to express how he or she is feeling. And as a parent, modeling that yourself, being real and genuine about that, because if you're not doing it, they're probably not going to do it.
Yeah.
So saying, you know what, I'm sad because I had to go to work today and I really wanted to stay home because I wasn't feeling that well. Or, I'm happy to see you, when I get home from work and you get home from school. So, as a parent, modeling those behaviors and making it okay and acceptable. And just, again, it's normalizing your feelings and your emotions. And that's ultimately what we want to do. So first off, just the parent being the one that models that, and then encouraging expression of their teenagers' feelings. And you can find fun ways to do that too. It can be more structured where, you sit down at the dinner table and every night and everybody goes around the table and shares a positive feeling they had that day and then a negative feeling they had that day. And again, that's another way to normalize and strengthen their feelings vocabulary. Or it could just be something a little bit more fun. You could incorporate an Uno game with cards. And so if somebody puts down a wild card and changes the color, that means everybody gets to share a feeling. Just finding, you can be very creative and just finding fun ways to incorporate that into daily activities, to where it doesn't have to be, because I know teenagers are really busy and they've got their friends, and so I know parents are aware of that, and so just trying to find ways to incorporate into daily living, and again, just normalizing it as much as you can is really helpful.
Wow, that's cool. I remember having dinner with a friend, and they were getting ready to they were having dinner with their kids, and then they say, okay, guys, we're going to do Rose and Thorn. And
yes.
They shared
yes.
The Rose was a great moment. The Thorn was a bad moment. And I was kind of like, wow, I had to really think about it. Like, wait, that is cool. And so their kids were probably like between 2 to 5 or like 3, 5, 6 area. And it was really cool to see them begin to learn how to express the difference between like a positive experience, negative experience.
Yes.
Like, that will be very memorable for them when they get older. That was pretty cool. I
love that. I love that. Your Rose and your Thorn. And you can name it whatever, I heard people say the Peak and the Pit, like, whatever. Put a twist on it. Let the kid come up with the name. But I love that.
That's
and
cool.
It really, when you do that, it really validates what your child is going through. And it's telling them that I'm here for you. I'm taking time to listen to you and to how your day has gone. And it just affirms them. And it's just a powerful thing that you can do as a family, even if it's just a mom and her son or daughter, or a mom and a grandma and the grandson, like it can be anybody.
That's really good. So here's a controversial kind of question that parents really, really struggle with. Some parents feel extreme guilt, and some parents, especially Christian parents, sometimes struggle with this. So how do you know when medicine should become being involved? So when is the point where we should consider medicine?
That's a great question. And it's one of those, again, kind of a gray area, because I always just fall back on it just depends on the client and the circumstance and kind of what's going on. And you have to be very careful with that. Obviously, it's a medication, and your brain, as a child, as a teenager in your early 20s is still developing. And so you want to be very careful of that, but that doesn't mean that it's not an option, of course. So I always just leave it up to the parent, it's just really a personal preference. And I always encourage the parent to talk it over with the pediatrician, especially if there's a psychiatrist involved, talking it over with the psychiatrist. And seeing what they think, and then sometimes trying to collaborate, as a therapist with the pediatrician. So if a parent is questioning that, maybe, I guess I just encourage parents not to feel guilty about that. It's just based off a individual need, and I just hope that parents have somebody that they can feel comfortable talking to with about medication, the possibility of medication, and those types of things. So I guess just to answer the question, it's just really personal preference and individual need. Like I've had kids who have been on medication, psychotropic meds, and then some who have not. And, it's just really personal preference.
Yeah. Yeah, because and it's not a one size fit all type question. It's for for adults, we had a interview with a guy named Bryce Landwehr, and we kind of asked that question to him too on the adult end. And he was just kind of mentioning the same thing. It's like, you know, there's a list of things that you want to do and consider and have as a practice before you consider medicine. But if it just gets extreme and it can't be handled by those other means, then you may want to consider it. And it's not good or evil or whatever, it's just what it is. And that's kiddos too.
Yeah, I will say, just from my personal professional opinion, especially working with clients who've had trauma, you want to be very careful with medicating the symptoms because you're not treating the real issue. And what we want to do is treat the issue, and that can be really hard and it can be a little bit dirty sometimes, but you've got to get through that, and you've got to work with the root problem. And if you're just treating the symptoms, you're not really doing anything. You're just feeling good in the moment, and then later down the road you're having to adjust the dosage or medication and that type of thing. So I do try to provide that education to parents just to make them aware, you know, what therapy is. Therapy is just a natural way of dealing with certain things, you know, and albeit trauma or depression or anxiety or what have you, PTSD, you know, I think it's good for parents to know that, and but to still consult with their pediatrician as well.
That's great advice. So the last question is, we'll make it a fun one.
Okay.
So it's a practical question. So, okay, right now your kid is in an anxiety fit, so they're freaking out, and give us some of your tips on how you would, in a live moment, coach the kid through it, to give our parents like some practical hands-on things to do when their kids are struggling.
Well, first off, I would say, and this is something, again, I always try to educate parents on, as adults, we are co-regulators of the children around us. And so if you have your own child, you are the biggest co-regulator that they have, especially if they're at home in that moment. And that's the same for me as a therapist when I'm working with kids, or when they're going to school and they're around their teachers and everyone else, the staff. Those adults are serving as co-regulators. And so you're helping to regulate their emotions, which is essentially regulating their nervous system. And so that's always key. That's the most important thing, I think, for parents to remember, is that we are all co-regulators. So keeping that in mind, you know, when your child has a fit, or, you know, if it's just a behavioral problem, or if it's anxiety, you know, remembering that you've got to remain calm yourself. And that can be really hard. That can be really, really hard. You know, it's so much easier said than done. It's one of those situations, because parents look at me like, are you kidding me? Like, have you seen my child act up? And I'm like, I know, like, I believe you, you know, but, and that's where parents may have to do some exploring themselves to see what helps them to regulate themselves, you know, if they have to walk away. Because again, if your child is enraged with anger or anxiety or some type of negative feeling, their emotional brain is activated, and we want to try to deactivate that. And we want to try to calm that down. And so we've got to be calm, because if we come at them with the same type of level of intensity or anxiety or whatever it may be, it's going to elevate it. So just remaining calm. I always educate on deep breathing. That's just one of the most important skills anybody could ever learn. I think it's something you could do anytime, anywhere. You don't have to go buy anything. So there's some fun like apps online that you can get for deep breathing. There's a Sesame Street YouTube video, I think it's called Belly Breathing, that parents can look at. There's books. But basically the way to teach deep breathing is you want children to learn to take slow, deep breaths. And so you want them to learn to breathe in through their nose slowly, and then to hold for a second, and then to exhale slowly for a longer period of time than you inhale. So that's always key, is in that moment trying to get your child just to do some deep breathing. If they're not if they're not listening to that or responding to that, and there's a good chance that they're not, because again, their emotional brain is activated, just giving them time to kind of flesh that out and get whatever's going on out. And just kind of staying away from them in that moment, unless you're concerned they're going to hurt themselves or something. But deep breathing is always just a good standard thing to do, because there's not really much else you can do in those moments. Again, I tell parents, you don't want to engage with them verbally in those moments, because you're just going to make it worse. You don't want to say, calm down. You don't want to say, why are you crying, or why are you upset? Why are you not controlling your breathing? You've got to remain calm and regulated, so that they can hopefully match you, and help them to de-escalate.
Wow, that's fantastic. I've heard those questions, so those questions are really not good in that live action moment, and us staying home as adults with kids.
Yeah.
That's really good. So I guess what would be some final I want to say this before we do that. You gave us a ton of resources. We're super excited about that. It'll be on our link out on the YouTube. So just look right under this video. You'll see all of those links. We appreciate that for sure. So what would just be some final just encouragement, advice that you would have with parents as they try to just manage raising kids in this world that is way more, it's just a different world we live in now. So kids are growing up very differently than maybe, we did in our age. They have social media. They learn how to operate a phone before they're able to talk. It's just insane.
Yes, I know. Yes.
So what is just some cool advice and encouraging word do you have for our parents as they try to navigate raising kids in this world with the mental and emotional health?
Again, just as early on as you can, being proactive about increasing that feelings vocabulary, starting that feelings vocabulary, and then strengthening, increasing that feelings vocabulary. I know I gave you some resources on some books. Those books make excellent gifts for baby showers, kids' birthdays. It may not be the most fun present that they receive. It's not a bicycle or a cell phone or anything like that, but definitely it can be very instrumental throughout their lifetime. Because I've worked with adults who are like, I wish I would have learned as a child, how to regulate myself. So, just being very proactive about teaching emotions and normalizing emotions. And that's just the start to everything else, and can help curb some of the other things like anxiety and depression and those types of things. The other thing I think that would be helpful, especially with what our country is going through right now, is mindfulness. And it's teaching kids to be present in the moment. And that's really good for children with anxiety. And so there's a lot of fun resources like books and things you can get on mindfulness. For instance, you could take your child outside and go on a sound hunt and try to identify as many sounds as you can, or, hunt for a butterfly and look at the colors of the butterfly and imagine what the butterfly is doing and what it's going to smell when it lands and what it feels like. So trying to kind of activate through all of their five senses, certain experiences, and that helps them to remain present and mindful. And it helps with, intrusive thoughts, trying to help eliminate a lot of intrusive thoughts. And that's just good for brain development, honestly, is just being very mindful. So I think, being very proactive about emotional intelligence and, incorporating as well the mindfulness activities that you can do, especially again right now with what's going on in our country. It's really imperative and really, really healthy for their development. So.
Wow, that's really cool. Well, we appreciate you so much, Ashlyn. Thank you. We wish you Godspeed on the rest of your time of being observed. And when you go out and you're a licensed professional counselor on your own, we know you're going to do fantastic. So
thank you.
Support.
Thank you.
I want to encourage our parents as we close with this scripture that was kind of on my heart. Psalm 46:1, where it just says, God is our refuge and strength, and he's a very present help in time of trouble. And so right now we're facing something that's unprecedented for our world. And I know we have parents who are at home with their kids more than they have been before. And we just want to send an encouraging word to let you know that God is there. You're not parenting alone. He's with you. And we just want to encourage you. You're doing a good job. You're doing the best you can. And we just wanted to resource you in a different kind of way. So we love you guys and hope y'all have a good rest of your day. Thank you again, Ashlyn.
Thank you.
What an amazing interview from Pastor Demetrius and Ashlyn. So many great things that we can think about this week. If you feel like there's a next move that you need to make, we encourage you to go online and fill out a digital connection card at movechurch.tv/connect. You can also give online, or you can text to give, and that information will be up on the screen. We thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you have a great rest of your day.